and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. At issue tonight, the state budget. Lawmakers are beginning the process of using your tax dollars to build the state budget for fiscal year 2019. The budget is expected to be approximately $6 billion. The money will be allocated to fund all areas of state government, including education, transportation, health, agriculture, and public safety. These functions affect everyone in the state. Lawmakers won't know the exact budget amount until they know how much money the state can spend based on tax revenue collections. State economist Darren Webb says Mississippi's economic performance has been uninspiring since the Great Recession. We will talk with him about the reasons why in just a moment. The Joint Legislative Budget Committee met recently to start work on the next state budget. Agency directors presented their budget request to the 14-member committee, which will make its budget recommendations in November. Voting on the final state budget is typically the final order of business for the House and Senate during the legislative session. MPB's Desiree Frazier spoke with some lawmakers after the budget hearings.
Well, I appreciate the folks coming in and talking about their request this year. You know, when I first started as Lieutenant Governor, we had $1.2 billion more requested than what the previous year's budget was. This year it's about $600 million, and so I think we're making progress. I like to be optimistic about having some agency directors that understand where we're trying to go and that we're not going to spend money that we don't have, and not come in here and just ask for things that you know you're not going to get. Let's be realistic about a budget. We're very focused on ensuring that we're efficient in the way in which we expend taxpayer dollars. And I believe strongly that we work for the taxpayers. We don't work for the bureaucracy that has been created for the last 200 years, this being our bicentennial year, of course. And so I'm encouraged that we're having good dialogue.
I'm listening for those critical needs when that agency comes in and has something that's out of the ordinary. That's the first thing I'm listening for, is what out of the ordinary are they asking about or talking about that they have not had in the past? That, not just the, we want to give everybody a pay raise. Well, those are things, everybody like to get a pay raise, but that's not moving the needle. But when they come in and an agency is really on their game and they're, for instance, may have a new program they're wanting to implement that can change things for the better. You know, like in K through 12 education, some new maybe literacy program or superintendent's academy, things like that might improve leadership in schools. We're looking for things like that. And again, we're looking for critical needs first, something that you hate to say something blows up. You want to know what do we need to fix. Then you want to look for things that might move the needle as far as allocating new money. Anyway, that's what I asked for. And then I'm asking, also, I'm listening, what's that dollar amount that they're asking for?
As you listen, what perks up your ears and what are you willing to go to bat for?
Education every time. Of course, the economic development, we need to continue to push on that front. And of course, job training, we need to do a lot more as far as the legislature to get our people trained. And encouraging them to, at the lower level, well, higher level, high school level, to go into more trades. And that way we have our workforce trained when they come out of high school. We have been lackadaisical over the last few years in that area. We need to move in that direction right now.
Well, the budget still looks very, very tight. I mean, the last 2 years, growth in the state, economic growth has been under 1%. It's not expected to get much better. So you're going to continue to see slow economic growth in Mississippi, and you're also dealing with a lot of big tax cuts on the horizon, and so that's going to affect the budget in a big way. The main thing that's going to impact our budget in the years ahead are massive tax cuts that have been passed in the past few years that are going to significantly reduce the budget, and that means further cuts to education. That means further increases in tuition at the college and community college level. We need to revisit some of those tax cuts so we can have a responsible budget going forward.
We also talked with some state agency heads about their budget requests.
We've asked for increases where we are seeing increase in student achievement. So that's the reason the whole focus was on a return on investment. We're seeing tremendous growth with our pre-K and kindergarten, so the whole early learning collaboratives are working. So we've asked for an additional $6 million there. We're seeing a lot of improvement with our literacy coaches, so we have asked for additional money there. We're asking for additional money for professional development because that's what's making it happen in the classroom for our teachers. So all of our asks are as a result of the outcomes that we're getting. The schools they need money with which to work, and so we are committed to continuing to support. The state board has been very clear about that they have continued to support full funding of MAEP, and that was our ask today.
If I had to pick, those top three I just talked about would be it. Trooper School. Again, we're requesting another Trooper School behind the one this year. Trooper School because of the shortage. We've got 147 eligible to retire, more MBN agents, and the crime lab. And I'd probably put the crime lab second. Trooper School, crime lab, not taking anything from MBN. I mean, we could use another 100 agents. We got such an issue with drugs here, like they do everywhere else. But again, as I've always done with every agency I've been with, since I've been with the state, and even when I was a Fed, we're going to do the best job we can with what we got. There's no time for whining. I mean, if you got everything you need, if you're fat, dumb, and happy, got all the budget, all the personnel, everything that you need, it's good. But the true test comes when you don't have everything you need and you still got to get the job done. And I got all my division heads, hard chargers, hard-working professionals, and we're going to get it done.
I mean, I wish if the revenue was coming in stronger, I'd had a lot more ask. But I understand the situation, and until that turns around, we just got to do the best we can.
So right now we're flat.
We're flat, but it's getting better. It's going to get better.
Joining us now is state economist Darren Webb. He's the director of the University Research Center at the Mississippi Institutions of Higher Learning. Darren, glad to have you with us.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your role, what the state economist's role is as it relates to the legislature and this budget writing process.
Okay, well, our office does economic forecasting. We do projections for employment, income, various sectors. We look at what's going on in the state's economy, what's going on in the national economy. That then feeds into the revenue projections, and I'm a part of the revenue estimating group that makes the revenue projections. So that's how it directly relates to that. Our office also does economic impact analysis. So for new industries that are coming in, we're sometimes asked to examine the benefits of the incentives versus what's costing the state. So we do that kind of analysis as well.
So as the legislature lays out their spending plan, obviously they need to know how much revenue they should reasonably expect will be coming in the form of tax revenue in the coming year. That's where they come to you and say, hey, how much do you think we're going to be making next year?
Exactly.
And how do you do that? That's obviously an important job, but a difficult one.
It's an interesting process. Somebody has said that you don't want to look at forecasting and you don't want to see how sausage is made either. but what we do, we look at what's going on at the national level and the historical trends there. We look at how what's happening at the national level relates to the state's trends. And based on those projections, based on what's the national's forecast to do, we see what's happening in Mississippi. And then we have a different set of models that feeds into the revenue forecasting. So what's happening in Mississippi's economy and how that relates to revenues historically.
So how is Mississippi doing right now?
Mississippi's economy we're growing. We're not growing very strong. We have had a rough few years. If you look at what's happened at national, we're in an environment where the national economy is just not growing very much. We're in what people call the new normal, which is slow growth. For example, we haven't had 3% growth since 2005 at the national level. And looking at the projections, we're not expecting 3% growth for the foreseeable future.
On the national level?
At the national level. So what that has done for Mississippi is it's very hard for Mississippi to grow when the national economy is not growing. And so when you look back how we've done, say, since the recession, the big recession, the Great Recession, we grew a little bit in 2010, then we saw a decline in 2011. We saw pretty strong growth in 2012, but then 2013, very little growth. And then 2014, we took a hit, that is, we declined, and then less than 1% growth in 2015, 2016. So our track record over the past several years has been very, very slow. It's been very sluggish. In fact, if you go from 2009, where the bottom of the recession, to the most recent numbers that we have for annual GDP in 2016, the state has grown 1.7%. So that's a very slow growth. At the national level, the same period of time is 15.9%. So, what I told the legislature last week was that we've had very lackluster recovery since the recession.
And how does that compare to how other states are doing?
Well, most other states are doing better. I was asked that question actually last week, and I think the only state that probably is doing worse than us right now is probably Louisiana. Louisiana is, at least our local states around us, that is. Louisiana is taking a big hit in their oil and gas industry, and so they're probably doing a little bit worse than we are. But for the most part, other states are doing better than we are.
To what do you attribute our lackluster growth in Mississippi?
I think that there are a number of reasons. Again, probably one of the most primary issues, at least here recently, is the slow growth national. It's very hard for Mississippi to perform when the nation's not having a robust economy. I also think, though, that Mississippi's human capital is very low. So human capital is not just education. It is education. It's training, workforce training, but it's also health and even family issues can be involved in that. So Mississippi has a high incidence of unwed motherhood, for example. And basically on any measure that you were to look at, you would find that children raised in that environment have a more difficult time. So basically any negative measure is worse without the father present. So there's a high incidence of that in Mississippi, and so human capital-wise, we are probably the lowest in the country. And we're in an environment where human capital is valued even more. So we're seeing increase in robotics, increased in skills. We need skills in the workforce that Mississippi does not have.
So from your standpoint, how do you fix that? How do you fix where we are?
I don't think there's any silver bullets. There's nothing to immediately fix anything, in my opinion, in Mississippi. It is a systemic problem that has existed for decades. And I think that we're seeing more of it now because the national economy is doing so poorly, so it's more evident. When the national economy is kind of booming, these kind of issues kind of gets lost in the mix. But right now, we're seeing it more clearly. So I think we have to address the human capital issues for Mississippi, and that's a long-term problem. It has to do with workforce training, and it has to do with education, and people making better choices in their life even.
We've talked about the last 10 years or so in Mississippi and on the national level and in other states. Let's look ahead. What do you foresee in the coming fiscal year as far as how much the legislature will have to work with?
Well, we haven't made those projections. We make those projections, we try to get the September numbers in before we even look too hard at that. But I can tell you this, just looking at the overall economy, I think our projections for Mississippi, for the U.S. is for about a 2.1% growth for calendar year 2017, followed by a 2.8% growth for 2018. So we're looking at the national level around 2.5% for the fiscal year period. For Mississippi, we grew, I think, 0.8% in 16. We're looking for a little bit better than that, but not much, maybe about 1.2% in terms of GDP. And then for 18, maybe a little bit better, maybe around 1.5%. So we're looking at somewhere just a little over 1% growth probably for the fiscal year in terms of GDP.
State economist Darren Webb, thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get straight to the point with views from both sides of the aisle. Brandon Jones is a Democrat. He's an attorney with the Beria Jones law firm and a former member of the House. Austin Barber is a Republican national strategist. He's the founding partner of the Clearwater Group. We're talking about a $6 billion budget here. Austin, what could or should the legislature do to increase revenue?
Well, they could raise taxes, and that ain't going to happen. Okay? They can do what Republicans believe in, which is I want to try to give more tax dollars, more money back to taxpayers with the hope that and the thought that if I'm a small business owner and I'm able to keep more of my money, I'll reinvest those savings that I had back into the economy. I'll hire more people. I'll pay my current employees more money. I'll reinvest in my warehouse that I have, which means that I had to go. I added on to it, which means I hired contractors to come build. And with that, there's more money that's spread out there and more revenues are coming in.
Tax cuts you're talking about.
Yeah, tax cuts. You can do one or the other. It's just a fact that the leadership and the supermajorities in both houses are much more on the latter versus the former of a tax increase.
You know, we've talked a lot about form, and I think those are important conversations to have. It's part of the way to bring people into the process, give them a sense of how things work. But when we move to function, we have to say, if we're going to be honest about it, that we are overseeing a failing economy, and that job creation has not been where it was supposed to be. And we've had 6 years of Republican math and Republican budget ownership, and this is where we are. I think we have to be honest about those truths. This is a Republican budget. And you asked a moment ago, Wilson, what would Democrats do? Well, I think it's an important question to ask, because you can't be critical without asking the follow-up of what's your response. But that's a truly hypothetical scenario, because given the numbers, Democrats truly don't have a voice in this process. And so the truth is, good, bad, indifferent, the product of these decisions are Republican owned. And for 6 years now, that's been the deal. I'm concerned that voters are getting snowed and being told, yeah, let's just wait. All we need to do is change the process and it'll get better. These tax cuts are going to start paying dividends down the road. But now hang on, give us till 2025. And the finish line keeps getting moved. We've seen no appreciable positive effect of Republican budget making on this economy. This is a bad economy, and Republicans own it. And so I think the other thing to point out is we sometimes act like it's like gravity or like the sky, all these natural things are happening that are causing the money to be a little bit off in Mississippi. Decisions led us to this point. We have given untold tax cuts to out-of-state companies. Right now, the Mississippi budget is paying part of the property taxes for Walmart. Now that's about transparency. People should know that. People should know how their dollars are being spent and what benefits are built into this current budget.
Since you bring up Walmart, Walmart, who's probably one of the largest employers in the state of Mississippi, Walmart, who just built a very large facility in my hometown of Yazoo City, Mississippi, that probably hired 100 or so people there. So, I don't like, you and I hardly disagree here, I don't like the taking shots at a Walmart or somebody who's a big employer. Yeah, Walmart's got plenty of money, but we've got to incentivize. And part of the incentivization of sort of the job recruitment world is you've got to give some tax incentives to some big companies, because we want them to bring their 100 jobs, 1,000 jobs, whatever it is. You got to make smart deals. You're not always going to make a smart deal. We've made some bad ones in the past, and I realize we've got to be smart there. But I think, listen, under Republican leadership, whether it's the budgeting process or the appropriations process, I think they've done wonders when you look at education. Education is an issue that Democrats own for a long time. I think under the leadership of Tate Reeves, Phil Bryant, and Philip Gunn, we've got teacher pay raises. We've got the K through 12 education has gotten more money than the history of our state. We've done a lot of different things there. It was a bad year last year. I can't come here and say that it wasn't. Revenue numbers were down in 2016. The good news is it looks like for FY18, they're up a little bit. They're up about 4%. People that I talk to who are smarter than me on this issue feel like the rest of this fiscal year will bring forward some positive signs on that front, and we need it because we've got some big things to do. The legislature has some big things to do in 2018. What do we do about Medicaid growth? What do we do to continue to make sure education is fully funded in the best way possible? And then what do we do about the biggest issue in terms of what I think is infrastructure? How are we going to handle that?
Medicaid, in fact, asking for another $47 million next fiscal year. You brought up education. Isn't that a big question mark for next year, because we don't know what ed bill we'll need once that comes online?
It is, and I can't really have some detailed conversation with you about that because I don't really know the exact answer there. But yeah, we have to figure out, listen, under the leadership that we have right now, is brought forth by Republicans, I think they've done an excellent job on education. I really do. Brandon probably disagrees with me on this, but I think test results are better. We still got some areas like JPS that have problems, Jackson Public Schools that have problems, and we'll always have that. But I think for those areas, hopefully those are obviously individual and the exception, versus the rule. But listen, I also think what's important is, and I don't want to miss this, is we got to get back to fully funding our rainy day fund. I think there's $200 to $250 million that's in it right now. And why it's no different than us, whether you're sitting here at the table or watching at home, we better have a savings account. Because we're going to have bad years, we're going to have bad months, we're going to have bad weeks, we're going to wreck the car, the kid's got to have braces, the TV broke, whatever it is, the tornado came through and we got issues with the roof. Those same things happen in government. It was a bad economy throughout the country. Mississippi suffered maybe more. And fortunately, we had a big rainy day fund, a big savings account with a lot of money in there that the governor was able to go to and utilize in 2016. Hopefully, he will not be forced to do that again. Hopefully, we can grow it up to about a $400 million mark, because there are things that we can do with that. It helps our bond rating. It gives flexibility to legislators to go and say to leadership within these different agencies, you know what? We've got $400 million. We've got a fully funded rainy day account, and we're going to utilize that as a tool. We're going to try to tell you, you know what? We feel comfortable. We can guarantee you over the next 4 or 5 years, 1% growth to get you off this roller coaster.
Yeah, but let's be honest. We can't pay our bills. We can't save money. The biggest rater of the rainy day fund is the Republican governor. So Republicans can't lecture anybody on the rainy day fund. Y'all are the ones who have tapped it.
Yeah, but of course he was forced to do that by the Constitution.
5 times since we were here last year.
Yeah.
5 times.
That's right.
And
we had a bad year
but
last
it's
year,
his
which we
budget
both
and
agreed
economy,
to.
and they write laws, and he controls the pen. So he's not forced to do anything that he can't change, and we all know that. And the education process, I don't know. Ask Brandon and Hernando and Grenada and Ocean Springs how they feel about this wonderful education funding plan. They've all had to increase taxes. Another city's thinking about increasing taxes as you and I are having this conversation. This economy is in the tank, and we need to be honest about it. Look, we can talk theoretically about other states and how they do other things, but right now that process would be cruel here because we can't pay bare minimum. We can't even do level funding for a lot of these agencies. So what happens if one comes in and puts on a good show and all their numbers are showing up and all the services they do are good? It doesn't matter. We can't fund them. And then what happens if we want to do some innovative thing? You can't pay for innovation if you can't pay for basics. We have roads and bridges that are in immediate disrepair, past the point of disrepair. So when you're looking at a state that has famine essentially in parts of the Delta where you can't even buy fruits and vegetables at the grocery store, and we have roads that you can't travel down or trust that your school bus is going to get there or trust that you can make it to your job, to talk about performance-based budgeting in an environment like that is just, that's not realistic because we're not doing basic services. And so I think when I say transparency, what I mean by that is let's all cut back the bluster, let's peel back the onion and say, look, we're not calling it Republican, we're not calling it Democrat, but here's how your money's flowing, and do you agree with that? Does that represent our best values? I think if we did that, we'd see major change.
But you would have everybody to believe that the famine, as you used the term, because that's how the Clarion Ledger wrote it, that happened in Holmes County or Humphreys County or Issaquah County, happened just under Republican leadership. I grew up in the Delta. We've had poverty in the Delta for generations and generations and generations. We've had bad roads for generations. And so this is not the fault of Republicans. I completely understand that. But what Republicans and what I would love to see them do is say, you know what? We're not going to try to pass the blame on leadership from the past or leadership moving forward. We're going to try to fix these issues. And infrastructure is one they didn't get done last year. And it's a valid point for you to be able to say, we got issues with roads. Now, dadgummit, we got issues with roads for decades. But we have, obviously, it's become a big issue, and we need to figure out a way to get that done. And I hear really positive things about how they're going to get that done next legislative session. And if they don't, they'll pay the penance at the ballot box. And that's,
well, and maybe, but I mean, I think that part of true accountability means at some point we have to truly turn the page. And as Democrats, it's easy for us to say that because we're not in power. But Republicans got into power by running very effective campaigns by messaging to people that Democrats got the budget wrong, that Democrats spent too much money, that we were going to cut your taxes and make life better. They have not delivered on that promise. So somebody at some point in leadership is going to have to stop the back and forth, quit talking about, well, yeah, it's bad, but it was bad before. Well, that ain't what you sold people on. No, but Phil Bryant did not run for governor saying Democrats got it wrong. I'm going to keep getting it wrong, but at least you'll have a Republican. At some point, somebody has to take accountability, and we got to quit looking across the aisle and looking at each other crossways. We have to look at it and say, look, this is a real issue, and we can't even begin to work on creative solutions until we own the fact we got a problem here. Let's not try to sell it. Look, Republicans are in such a clear blue runaway right now at the ballot box that they could do some risky things without probably paying a political penalty. That's just the state of play in Mississippi. And so rolling back some things, taking a closer look at some things, doing some very smart incremental policy making and economic management, I think you could get some Democrats on board with that. And, you know, look, I'm a voice crying out in the wilderness. I don't even know why they still give me a table here, a seat here, because we're in such a growing minority. It's rough. But if we're going to make this state better, we're going to have to get past the partisan bickering and just say, look, it is bad, and some of this is bad because we've made it worse, and it's our decision making.
Well, look, I'm always for trying to figure out what are some tough choices that we got to make, what are the right priorities that we need to have, and what's the best way to go focus on those. Hard for me to disagree on that point.
Well, let that be the final point. Austin, Brandon, thank you both as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are out of time. Don't forget you can check out the program on our website, mpbonline.org/issue. Please join us again next Friday night here on MPB for another edition of At Issue. Good night.